For centuries, Rome stood at the center of the world, an empire built on discipline, innovation, and relentless ambition. It rose from a small village on the Italian peninsula to command continents. And then, just as powerfully as it rose, Rome crumbled. Today, we explore how Rome conquered the world and how it ultimately lost everything. Rome's story begins not with marble palaces, but with dirt roads, wooden huts, and humble farmers. Around 753 BCE, the city was little more than a cluster of settlements along the Tiber River. It was a small, unremarkable place surrounded by powerful neighbors. But the early Romans possessed a belief system that would set them apart. While many ancient societies relied on the whims of gods or the lineage of kings, the Romans believed in something revolutionary, that hard work, discipline, and unity could transform a weak society into a powerful one. This wasn't just a philosophy, it was a way of life. The entire society was built on three core pillars: citizen loyalty, where duty to the state came first; military obligation, where every citizen was expected to serve; and unity in crisis, the idea that when threatened, Romans stood together. This mindset fostered an incredible resilience. By 509 BCE, they had grown tired of tyrannical kings. They overthrew their last monarch and established something new, something bold, a republic. This government, theoretically for the people, was designed to prevent any one person from holding too much power. But this new republic was ambitious. It wouldn't remain confined to the lands around it for long. Rome's rise wasn't an accident, it was engineered. The engine of this expansion was the Roman military, arguably the most effective fighting force the ancient world had ever seen. They trained relentlessly, mastering weapons and tactics. Discipline was their ultimate weapon. It held their formation steady against terrifying charges and allowed them to execute complex maneuvers with precision. They fought in legions, highly organized, flexible units of around 5,000 men that could outmaneuver the rigid phalanxes of their enemies. A legion could fight as a single, massive block or break down into smaller, more agile cohorts, adapting to any terrain or threat. But soldiers alone don't build an empire. As Rome expanded, it secured its conquests with an incredible feat of engineering, the Roman road system. These weren't just paths, they were meticulously constructed, all-weather highways that stretched across the growing empire. Famously straight and durable, these roads allowed legions to march rapidly to quell rebellions or defend borders. They also served as arteries for trade, communication, and culture, binding the conquered territories tightly to the heart of Rome. Above all, it was the Roman mindset that fueled their ascent. Where other powers saw a devastating defeat as the end, Rome saw it as an opportunity to learn and rebuild. If they lost a battle, they analyzed their mistakes, raised new legions, and returned to the field stronger and smarter. This relentless spirit helped them dominate the Italian peninsula. But soon, just across the Mediterranean, Rome would face its greatest rival, the mighty maritime empire of Carthage. The Punic Wars were three brutal, existential conflicts that would forge Rome's destiny. For over a century, these two superpowers clashed for control of the Mediterranean. The most legendary chapter of this rivalry belongs to Hannibal Barca, a brilliant Carthaginian general who achieved the impossible. He marched an army, complete with war elephants, from Spain over the treacherous Alps and into Italy itself. For years, Hannibal inflicted one crushing defeat after another on the Romans, most famously at the Battle of Cannae, where he annihilated a massive Roman army. Any other nation would have surrendered, but the Romans were not any other nation. They refused to give in. Instead, they adapted. They avoided direct confrontation with Hannibal in Italy, while their general, Scipio, took the fight to Carthage's home turf in Africa. The Romans outlasted, and eventually, at the Battle of Zama, defeated Hannibal and destroyed Carthage entirely. With its greatest rival gone, nothing stood in Rome's way. The floodgates of conquest opened. Rome seized Spain, North Africa, Greece, and vast swaths of the Middle East. It was no longer just an Italian power. It was the undisputed master of the Mediterranean world. Unimaginable wealth from conquered lands poured into the city. Roman culture, law, and language began to spread across its new provinces, but this explosive growth came at a cost. The very foundations of the Republic began to crack under the immense weight of power, corruption, and internal conflict. Rome's greatest threat was no longer an external enemy, it was itself. As vast fortunes were made from conquest, the gap between the ultra-rich and the impoverished masses grew into a chasm. Political battles, once fought with words in the Senate, now spilled into the streets with daggers and mobs. Ambitious generals, leading armies loyal only to them, began to wield more power than the elected officials in Rome. Into this vortex of chaos and ambition stepped a man whose name would echo through history: Julius Caesar. A brilliant military tactician and a masterful politician, Caesar's conquests in Gaul made him a hero to the Roman people and a dangerous threat to the old guard in the Senate. Fearing his popularity and power, the Senate ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Caesar faced a fateful choice. To obey would mean political ruin and likely death. To refuse meant civil war. On the banks of a small river called the Rubicon, which marked the border of Italy, he made his decision. He led his legion across, uttering the famous words, "The die is cast, civil war erupted." But his victory didn't bring peace. In 44 BCE, a group of senators, fearing he aimed to become a king, assassinated him on the floor of the Senate. They believed they were saving the Republic. In reality, they had just hammered the final nail in its coffin. The power vacuum left by Caesar's death triggered another brutal civil war. From the bloody struggle for succession, one man emerged supreme: Caesar's adopted son, Octavian. Taking the name Augustus, he became Rome's first true emperor, skillfully disguising his absolute power behind the facade of the old republic. His reign marked the beginning of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For the next 200 years, the empire experienced unprecedented stability, prosperity, and expansion. Rome grew larger than ever before, stretching from the misty frontiers of Britain in the west to the deserts of Mesopotamia in the east, from the Rhine River in the north to the sands of Egypt in the south. Its cities flourished, adorned with magnificent temples, amphitheaters, aqueducts, and public baths. Roman law provided a unified legal framework for millions of diverse peoples. Roman culture, a blend of its own traditions with those of the Greeks, dominated 3 continents. This was Rome at its zenith, a global superpower, wealthy, confident, seemingly unstoppable. The Mediterranean was, for all intents and purposes, a Roman lake. But even at the height of its glory, beneath the glittering surface of the Pax Romana, the cracks that would eventually shatter the empire were already forming. Rome's fall wasn't a single event, but a slow, agonizing erosion caused by a cascade of interconnected problems. The political stability of the Pax Romana dissolved into chaos. In a period known as the crisis of the 3rd century, dozens of emperors rose and fell in rapid succession, many murdered by their own troops or overthrown by rival generals. The imperial throne became a death sentence, and the empire was torn apart by constant civil war. At the same time, the economy was collapsing. Decades of war, lavish spending, and heavy taxes crushed the populace. Debasement of currency led to rampant inflation, crippling trade, and impoverishing the middle class. The empire's heart was failing. Rome's military, once its greatest strength, became a critical weakness. The legions were no longer filled with loyal citizen soldiers fighting for their republic. Instead, Rome grew increasingly reliant on foreign mercenaries, often from the very Germanic tribes they fought against. These soldiers had no deep-seated loyalty to the empire. They fought for pay, and their allegiance was often to the highest bidder. As the military weakened from within, the pressure from without intensified. Barbarian invasions, once a containable threat, became an existential crisis. Germanic tribes like the Goths and Vandals, themselves pressured by the westward migration of the fearsome Huns, poured across the borders. Cities were sacked, provinces were lost, and the frontiers collapsed. Finally, in a desperate attempt to manage its immense unwieldy territory, the empire was officially split into 2 halves: the Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire, centered on the magnificent new city of Constantinople. The East, wealthier and more defensible, would survive for another 1,000 years. But the West was now isolated and vulnerable. In 410 CE, the unthinkable happened. The city of Rome was sacked for the first time in 800 years. Then, in 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was quietly deposed. The Western Roman Empire had officially fallen. It had lost everything it once fought to build. Though the Western Roman Empire fell, its legacy never did. It is a ghost that still haunts our world, an echo that resounds in our institutions, languages, and cities. Roman law, with its principles of evidence and justice, forms the bedrock of many modern legal systems. The very languages spoken by hundreds of millions Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian evolved directly from the Latin spoken by the Romans. And the Roman ideas of citizenship, republican governance, and engineering continue to shape and guide the modern world. Rome conquered the world, it lost everything. But in so many ways, in the very fabric of our civilization, Rome still lives in us all. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories from history.